All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Soloff with InformTheVoteNJ.com.
Joe Sooy, Vice Mayor, Commissioner, City of Millville.
And for all of you out there who don't necessarily know what I'm doing here at Inform the Vote, as people approach election season, usually they get their primary ballots in the mail. They may or may not have been paying attention. They don't know who the names on the ballot are. So what I'm trying to do is help bridge that gap between I'm not quite sure who I'm going to vote for and present some information to help you make that choice. And today we're going to focus on the Millville City Commissioner election, which has one seat open.
Correct, one seat open and 4 candidates.
Right, and I think the incumbent is Ranello?
Right, the incumbent's Commissioner Ranello. There's former Commissioner Bob McQuaid running. Carol Casabone is running, as well as Maria Darmino.
Cool. And so with Joe already being on the board, what we want to do is pick his brain as to what's actually going on in Millville, the different issues, so that when you start to think about who you want to vote for, you can think about how each of those candidates may handle those issues. So, is there anything else about your background that you would want to share so that people get an idea?
Well, this is my second term. Degree in mathematics. I don't know, retired from corrections after 25 years, served time in the military.
Right.
Worked at Wheaton Glass, so that's about,
And Millville resident?
Millville resident pretty much my whole life, except for 4 years overseas.
Okay.
So, yeah, 2 kids.
So, yeah, if there's one guy you want to talk to, Joe's probably one of them. So let's dive into the actual issues.
Sure.
One thing you mentioned on the phone was economic development pros and cons. So as somebody like myself who just generally pays attention to like national politics, I would assume that you always want economic development, but it seems that sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Perhaps you want to elaborate.
Well, you have to be careful of what type of economic development you're getting, right? And then there's a lot of people don't want it. I mean, they just want things to be all woods and all natural. And you may or may not know, but Millville is about 48% preserved land, so it will never be developed.
Right.
Between game reserves and Natural Lands Trust and et cetera, stuff like that, Wild and Scenic Morris River, Green Acres land. So, but you need economic development because you only have really 2 ways to raise revenue. And it's either through taxation of what you have or economic development, and that increases your ratables. Increasing ratables for residents can help, but then you have to worry about if the children, how much it costs to educate a child in Millville. So you kind of want to keep a balance with that tax base and with economic development. So right now, I mean, if you want me to get into what we're doing now.
Actually, let me stop you just for 1 second. Just for people at home, I know over this past year, getting into politics, that word rateable, not everybody, I think, knows what that is.
You know what, you're probably right. So rateable, most people recognize their home as a rateable if they own a home. So you pay taxes on that. So that's considered a rateable because it's rated for taxes.
Okay.
Industry is also a rateable. Land is a rateable, but that's typically taxed at a much lower rate than your industry or your homes.
Okay, so basically any property.
Any real property, basically.
That could bring in revenue through taxes.
Correct.
Okay, so
that's one thing. And the other, of course, we're cannabis, other source of revenue with the 2% tax on that. Right now we only have one in operation, so we did receive our first check from that.
Is that you're talking about the dispensary type?
No, we don't allow dispensaries in Millville at this time.
Okay. That's
a big debate as well with, we had meetings to discuss it, and when we discussed it, yeah.
Discussed.
So when we talked about it, the majority of the people showed up were against it.
Okay.
After people found out we had our first check, now people want the money. It was only $15,000, and I say only because in a big city that doesn't go that far. So
right, they want it. The story changed, right? And they see the money, now they want to do it more.
I think eventually it'll probably happen. I don't know when,
Okay.
but we'll see.
That's an interesting point. I wouldn't have thought about that. You know, obviously we have the one in Vineland, but I didn't even know it was a discussion in Millville.
Yeah, see, I really, which goes to the point of people paying more attention to what we're talking about, right?
Exactly.
But, so I get to the
That
ratables.
seems like a fairly easy option too.
Well, it is, and then I don't know, do you have to go home and explain to your kids, don't smoke marijuana, but we're going to sell it, right?
Yeah,
so,
of course. Yep.
You have that problem. So, we really need the income from the ratables and from, some people don't like large warehouses, but you get a lot of income from large warehouses.
Right.
You don't, it's a trade-off because you want your police paid, right? You want your firemen paid. You want your city employees paid. You want to see great stuff going on in town, but it all costs money. So you need to make that money. I mean, we're not really that developed. We lost all the glass plants. So that was a big hit. Atlantic City's kind of gone downhill from what the heyday with, there were hundreds of people that lived here that worked in Atlantic City. Now, not so much.
Right.
Right. So, you have to make up that revenue, and warehousing is a good way to make up revenue. We're working on the industrial park at the airport.
Right.
So we have a lot of that under contract. Probably see a presentation on that. I'm assuming next month, I guess, from the developer at the city commission meeting.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So that'll be an interesting, topic, and that goes in with it's all related. It goes in with the development of Nabb Avenue.
Right.
Getting that road done so that people that businesses have a fast way to get to Route 55.
Right.
And the residents of Millville don't have a bunch of tractor and trailers
Right.
going through their backyards, right?
Just to elaborate that a bit, that's one issue that I became aware of over the past year, and apparently they've been talking about that for quite a long time.
Yeah, it goes back to originally there was going to be a huge housing development,
Okay.
and that kind of got quashed, and then they stopped talking about it for a while. But I think anybody that looks at a map and sees the Hurley Industrial Park has been vacant land since World War II.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's been sitting there for 80 years basically, and we've been cutting grass.
Right.
Right.
And my understanding is basically when you get off Route 55, the trucks, they kind of have to do either a convoluted route or go through Center City, Millville.
Right. Well,
as opposed to just like a more direct route.
Right. The more direct route would be come off of Sherman Avenue, cut down, Nabb Avenue.
Right.
And head straight out to Buckshootum Road and get to the airport. So less traffic, less interference with everything. And, again, you have people that want it and people that don't. But you got to kind of make the best.
Same kind of thing with the rural versus urban development kind of thing. I was at the meeting, the Cumberland County meeting about that, and there were a couple people who live on Nabb Ave, and they were kind of disappointed that the development would be there because it's extra noise and all that kind of stuff, extra traffic.
I get it, but they want to reap the benefits of the economic development too, right? So you want the benefits, but nobody wants it in their backyard. But I don't see that as a huge impact to them. Now on Nabb Avenue is a huge industrial scale solar project that's going in there.
Right.
So I don't always think that's the best use of land.
Okay.
I mean, you get all this. You're taking up basically what was farmland.
Yeah.
You're putting solar panels on it.
Right. So you're trading off one use for the other.
One use for the other, and
Right.
I don't see that as a big benefit to me. I mean, and I could get into solar, how you think it makes your electric bill go down, but you guys are getting your electric bills, and nobody's happy with them. So you tell me how that's working out for us.
Right. It's always more complicated than it seems.
Than it appears, for sure.
Okay, so then, just to summarize up to this point, basically, we've got the economic development. We want more economic development because it's going to bring in more tax revenue and create more jobs and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we're a rural area with almost 50% protected land, so it's kind of tricky.
Right. So the economic development won't take place on that protected land, obviously, right? But we do have to develop something here, or we're going to be, I don't know what we'll be. We'll be just
bankrupt, basically.
Yeah, bankrupt, and taxes will end up doubling or tripling, and then who wants to live here then?
Right.
So that's what you're faced against, and I think most people understand that.
Yeah. So I guess that would be one interesting topic to bring up to the candidates. Like,
Absolutely.
how would you navigate that chess game?
Absolutely.
Let's get into the next thing then. You mentioned the relationship between taxes and employee recruitment and retention.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with inflation, right, everybody wants more money, of course, because you need it, right? So, but we just can't print it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right, so, and how much can we raise taxes to make up for that difference? So, you know, I want the best paid and best trained and the best candidates and the best employees that we can possibly have. And we need to have economic development to do that. And what I would like to see, I would like to see the employees get a little more involved in saying, yes, we need economic development. I haven't seen that yet.
Do you? How do you mean by that? Do you mean like show up to commissioner meetings?
Up to commission meetings, or you know, even if they're telling their friends, hey, you know, we need to get economic development here. We, right. You know, we can't operate on shoestrings. I mean, you know.
And well, who would they bring that up to?
Whoever votes, right?
Okay.
So,
right. Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize it was that direct.
Yeah. So bring it up to the people
we all
to
need
vote.
To start talking about it.
Right. We need to get people on board.
Right.
Right. To go that way instead of, you know, and if some people understand it, some people don't. But if people can understand why you need it, I think then there's less opposition. I mean, you have some people that are just strictly environmentalist and, you know, quite frankly, I mean, they live in a house, so
yeah,
and it's a little
right. Both sides of the coin.
Both sides of the coin, right? I want a place to live, but I don't want industry near me, or you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I want to be comfortable, but I don't want all the things that go into
making me comfortable. Yes.
Right. I see that. So, yeah, getting people to pay attention that we need the taxes for better employment and better employees throughout.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of really good, really qualified employees. I don't mean to say that we don't have some good employees. You know,
but
really
there's always room for improvement.
But there's always room for improvement. And when you recruit, if you can't pay as much money as Vineland, you know, Vineland's going to get the people that they're going to go to Vineland, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, sometimes we steal their employees, they steal our employees and other municipalities, and that's just a game that's played. You know, the police department, and they got it tough right now, and you know, I feel bad in a way because, you know, they have a thankless job now. It's not like people, you know, before people would thank cops, and you don't see that as much until you need one. So, and we have to recruit and we have to retain them because now they can just transfer, right? Before you needed the chief's okay and didn't have to let them go. Now they can just go. So we're starting to see a little bit of that they're starting to leave. And we're in the middle of contract negotiations, and, you know, I know it's drawn out. It expired, what, nine months ago? But that's not a long time, really, if you look historically for contract negotiations.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's not, you know, people make it out, oh, it's so long, but it's not that really long of a time. I mean, when I worked in corrections, sometimes we went, I think the longest we went was 4 or 5 years without a contract.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know.
I guess there's a whole bunch of legal loopholes.
A whole bunch of legal loopholes, you know, they throw something at us and we throw something at them, and then they have to evaluate it. We have to evaluate it. So you know, we're working on it to, you know, try to get them a good contract. I mean, we want that. We don't, you know. And then by the same token, though, and this goes again, economic now ties into public safety, and you know, they're handcuffed in a lot of ways, right? You have this bail reform.
Yeah.
Crap, I'll call it what it is, right? You arrest a criminal and he's out on bail, and so it doesn't.
It's like there's nothing actually
more
safe
nothing
about it.
Right, there's nothing more safe about it. You're letting the criminals back out. And then we have, you know, an attorney general. You watch the motorcycles ride down High Street, and you know, you're
I just
not
saw a
supposed to chase them.
Facebook post from Cabazolo about that
yesterday.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, they're doing what they can, but you know, if they were to chase somebody and somebody got hurt, then they're in trouble, right? So you know, so you just can't do it by putting more cops on the street, because I could, you know, we could put 1,000 cops on the street,
but if they're not allowed,
but if they can't keep the criminals in jail, then there's no,
or they're not even allowed to pursue them,
or pursue them, correct? So, you know, that makes, you know, I had somebody tell me, you know, in fact, it was one of the candidates. Well, I went to Walmart and stuff was locked up. I said, well, what do you expect?
Yeah.
Nobody prosecutes shoplifters.
Right.
So
they have to keep everything locked or it'll get stolen.
Or it'll get stolen. I mean, why, you know, and why wouldn't you steal it if you didn't really care? Why,
right.
You might as well.
let's go down that little tangent because we kind of glossed over it real quick. I think most people around town know that there is a general problem with the ATVs and the off-road vehicles, but
Sure.
maybe let's elaborate on that, especially for like how long it's been going on and why the police officers' hands are tied and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that goes to your governor and to your attorney general, right? They're the ones, the attorney general is tying the police officers' hands with respect to that. So it's been going on for a long time. I mean, I can't even tell you how long it's been going on.
Sure.
It's just like it's normal now.
Right.
Right? You see it, you get mad, and it's almost to the point you don't expect anything to really happen, right? Until one of them gets killed, and that's happened a few times.
I mean, and one of my takes about it is I spent a year and a half in Vietnam, and their driving laws are very different, right?
Well, sorry about that.
No problem. When I was over there, there were no like stoplights, and people were turning around in the middle of the street and all this kind of stuff. And
I'm trying to turn the volume here down. Steve.
no, it's fine. And what I would see, and I don't know if this is hyperbolic or whatever, but it would be like this slippery slope where over there, I think somebody dies on the road once every hour in Vietnam, and we just don't want something where it's just like everybody just starts breaking all the laws on the road all the time.
If you don't enforce laws and you don't impose punishment, what's to stop people from breaking them?
Exactly.
I mean, you see it from the federal government right on down to the, to the local level, and sometimes even we write tickets and it goes to court and it just nothing happens, warrants aren't issued, and it's maddening, really. You're trying to clean stuff up, and a lot of times people are blaming the commission, right? Because we're easily to access, right? It's a lot easier coming to a commission meeting complaining about anything than going to the people that are actually responsible for making that law or making that rule, rather than going to your state or your governor or your legislature or whatever. And I'm not saying that our representatives do that, but the governor's office certainly does, and the attorney general certainly does.
Yeah, and I can empathize with the average person, because in my journey doing this over the past year, you can spend a lot of time trying to research all these topics, talk about them, meet up with people, blah, 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 blah. But the average person who's not spending all that time and has like a full-time job, kids, daily duties, mortgage, blah, 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 they're just like, hey, Joe, what can we do about this?
Yeah, what can we do? Correct. And I mean, a lot of times when things are going good, people don't pay attention. They don't care, right? If the economy's booming, their kids are doing well, they're making money, then, they stop watching what government's doing. Well, that's when government deteriorates. Right. So then they start watching when it gets bad, and then you're trying to fix it, and it becomes very, very difficult with a bunch of competing interests.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Then you also mentioned the development of Laurel Lake.
Yeah, sure. So, we had a planning board meeting last week about land down Buckshootum Road, and, they were upset about some of the proposed rezoning close to the lake. So we kind of addressed that, took a lot off, actually lot 141.1.
Can you explain
It's a 200-acre parcel that abuts Laurel Lake and Beaver Lake, I believe it's called, the two lakes there. So they were upset about that, and I'm not saying they're not justified in being upset about it, but but we have public hearings, and that's the purpose of the public hearing, so we can get input.
Yeah.
And again, we don't get much input till somebody sees something and gets mad about it, right? That was got to the planning board, then somebody noticed it. They didn't notice it when we talked about it in the commission. Nobody said a word. Right. And then, we don't want this. Okay. So, there was...
You're already like 3 steps.
Yeah, we're 3 steps into it. Now you don't want it. Okay, I get it. You don't want it, right? So, fine. So we'll adjust, and we'll meet with them, and we'll work out details. So, Laurel Lake right now, they have a problem with the water in the septic. Right. So it's a problem. The groundwater gets polluted by the septic. So,
and as I've been learning about that, it can raise the investment for people who want to buy a house, or they're trying to sell a house, it makes everything more complicated as opposed to
correct. If you need to put a new septic system in, it has to be so many feet away from not only your well but your neighbor's wells as well.
And it costs a lot of money.
And it costs money, especially new septic systems cost a lot of money. So what we're doing now, and they've been historically, I believe they've been underserved. I mean, the whole city's been underserved, but and particularly them. I mean, that place is beautiful down there, right? So right now we have a project. We're running water down there. So we get them city water.
Right.
Clean water. They'll have clean drinking water. Later on, and I mean later on, because when you get the economic development, you also get now it relates to infrastructure.
Sure.
So you have to have water available for
right. It's not just
for
the
industry.
homes,
It's not just the home. It's the industry and the business, and you need sewer, especially for the industry, right? Because a lot of like Oatly is gallons and gallons of waste. They pre-treat it and send it to our sewer plant. So we're in the process of upgrading the sewer plant. And believe me, I would love to do everything at once, but it's just not practical.
Right.
It's, sewer is very expensive, more expensive than the water, because the pipe's bigger. It has to be pressurized to get uphill. And, we'd love to do that, but we just can't do it now. Right now, we're expanding our sewer plant to take care of what industry is that we believe is coming. Right. After that, we can go further, but we don't have
the money.
We don't have the money. I mean, a lot of the money will come from the Infrastructure Trust Fund for New Jersey, which will offset a huge amount of the cost. But there's only so many projects we can handle at once.
That too.
And that's just the way it is. I mean, you can't,
or things will get out of control.
Yeah, they get out of control. Nothing really gets done. Everything gets bogged down with everything
Everybody
else.
should know that from their own personal life.
They should, yeah, right. It's like if you're, trying to remodel your living room and having company over for dinner at the same time, right?
Right,
Well,
it just doesn't function.
Yeah, it doesn't function very well.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else going on with Laurel Lake, or is that pretty much?
For the water, Buckshootum Road, we have people that are interested in developing that. There's another solar farm coming on, industrial size solar farm coming on Silver Run Road, Dividing Creek Road. This is Dividing Creek Road. So across the street from the airport.
Okay.
Okay, right directly across from where Bogdan Boulevard comes out. And these solar projects were done under the last commission, and they're just now getting around to actually starting doing stuff. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay. And then you also mentioned state mandates and the cooperation with county commission.
Yeah. So I mean, state mandates they're the biggest pain we have. For example, the state sent down a couple weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, 1,100 additional pages of stormwater regulations. 1,100 pages.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, that and some of the stuff, and I read it, and it's like New Jersey's getting warmer faster than any place in the world. Well, I have a hard time believing that.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're looking at that, and you're looking at the different rules between that. It's just the mandates constantly comes, for like water quality stuff.
You might be able to help clear up a bit. I hadn't even really thought about this until I started getting into this. How does it work from like state level to county to city? Like, what is that workflow? What is that communication, hierarchy, whatever? So most of the time, as far as what I've seen, and maybe somebody else has seen it different, but I see the regulations. They'll come down and they'll say you have to pass this ordinance if you want to continue to get funding, right? So most of the time, the mandates come from the state. The county doesn't really. I haven't seen the county send us any mandates. So the mandates come down for the state, and they range from. Some of them are good, but some of them are a little ridiculous. So you're trying to comply with them, and then you have developers, and when they submitted their plans determines, what regulations were in effect at the time. So a lot of times those new regulations with the stormwater in particular, and I'm not saying you don't need stormwater regulations, you certainly do. Sure.
But some of them start to get.
They just weren't a part of the plan when you made it.
Correct. Right? So now you have to adapt.
What usually happens, you have to update the plans?
Yeah, if their plans are already submitted, they're good usually, right? But if somebody's going to submit new plans, they have to deal with all the additional requirements.
Right.
Which can be very expensive. So, sometimes that hinders your economic development as well.
Right. It would bottleneck who wants to come in and who has enough money to do
Correct.
all the new regulations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and as far as the county commission goes, I mean, I've been a Republican my whole life. But I'm going to tell you something. I didn't get hired to represent the county. I didn't get hired to represent Morris River Township. I got hired to represent Millville.
Sure.
Right? So that's what I want to do. So when I look at Nabb Avenue in particular, to me, they're not moving fast enough. And I'll be blunt, and I've told them this. And, you know, I'm glad they're cooperating, but they're not moving fast enough. It really seems like they're kind of dragging their feet. So I'm very interested in talking to all the candidates. Because, you know, you got 5 people there from Vineland
On
the county commission,
Right.
which bothers me. I mean, we're the second largest city in the county, and we have no direct representation.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it in terms of that before.
Correct.
A lot of people say Republican versus Democrat or all kinds of other identities, I guess you could say. But then, right, it's, well, who's there from Millville?
Correct.
And then who's there from Morris River or whatever, you know?
You know, and I get indirect flack for not, well, you're not following the party line. Well, I don't know what you guys want, but I know I'm here to represent Millville.
Right.
So, you know, help me help you, right? If we get Nabb Avenue done, that's revenue for the entire county. It's just not revenue for Millville.
Right.
So that benefits the entire county. Now, we you know, they had a proposal they wanted us to pay for the design cost. So we're working it out with the developer where that will contribute $400,000 for the design cost. It's about a $1.4 million design cost project.
Okay.
So, you know, and I know government moves slow. And, you know, but, and no disrespect towards the present commission, but the county jail. Look at the mess the county created with that.
Well, maybe you could elaborate. Because
Well,
here's another, just to help clarify for you. As I've been getting into this over the past year, I've certainly heard about the county jail issues, and I go to the county commissioner meetings, but it's more like they're just speeding through what the resolutions are, as opposed to like me being able to be like, well, what is the problem? Like, you know, it's like, I don't even know.
If you look for the county agenda online before a meeting
Yeah.
and see if you find it.
Oh, yeah. I know where that is.
Right.
And then you look at 250-page agenda and
Yeah, you got to digest it, right? So, you know, the county jail, they were going to build a new county jail. They canceled the project in the middle, and basically I think $35 million was tied up, and, you know, we're still paying interest on bonds, and this is not this county commission's fault, right? I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of the other commissioners are going.
Okay.
But, you know, the problem still has to be solved.
Sure.
So, you know, I look at that, and then the county wants to do this middle mile project, which I don't fully understand how that benefits Millville. I don't see how it benefits us very much at all.
Sure.
But that's millions and millions of dollars. I mean, you know, they got a grant for, I don't know, 25, 27 million. And that's just a grant for that part, but there's still millions more dollars that have to be spent. So when I kind of look at stuff like that, I get a little frustrated that you want us to pay for Nabb Avenue. And okay, we can contribute, right? Not, you know, we should, I guess, a little bit, right? Not, you know, I love it if they pay for the whole thing, but I get it, right? But, you know, when I look at that, it frustrates me a little bit.
Yeah, as in you're representing Millville, you really want to prioritize the Nabb Ave thing, but then you see millions of dollars going to the
something
Millville
else, yeah. So that's a little frustrating. You know, they tell me, oh, it's not going to cost us anything. Well, I haven't seen a government project yet that hasn't cost local people anything.
Of course.
Right? I mean, where do you ever see that? So that's a little frustrating. So, I'm, you know, I communicate with the director, and, you know, he tells me some things, and some things he can't tell me. So, you know, we'll see how that works out. But I'm interested in hearing from all the candidates that are running, whether they support Nabb Avenue and how they support it. And I think that's important for the residents of Millville to know that, to make their decision on who they're going to vote for.
It's a huge project, and like I've been saying for quite a while, it's, you know, it's hard to find information like you're giving me today. This is really important, I think.
Correct.
But then not to just be aware of the issues, but how the candidates are going to handle them, and then all the voters can decide, do I want to go direction A, direction B, direction C, or whatever.
And, you know, that's kind of why I do encourage people to get involved in party politics, and it's not because I think you should believe one way or the other, But if you're involved in the party politics, that's where your candidates get picked.
Right.
Right. So when we go to the polls, we basically have choice A and choice B, because choice C very rarely wins. You know, that's like a miracle. So you're going to get a Democrat or you're going to get a Republican usually. So I don't care which party you get involved in, but get involved in one of them.
Right.
So you can choose your candidate. So when it's time to get a candidate, you can make sure that one from Millville is there on either side.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, it's important that you pick them carefully. But
I think it's always important to have that counter argument. You know, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or whatever, at least if we're having the discussion, then we can process like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I mean, you want the best choices you can get. And if you don't get involved, and I know everybody's busy, right? But if you don't get involved,
then you get
what you got, and, you know, shame on you.
It's kind of hard to complain about it, right?
Yeah. So they're not going to be happy with me for saying what I just said.
Well, I think that's just the honest truth, right? I mean, I guess what you could say, like, it just got out of being a young adult and now I'm like middle-aged, and it's time, right, to not brush this stuff to the side anymore, and especially with the way politics nationally are going right now. It's you're either going to be helping be part of the solution or you're just going to keep complaining, right?
Right. So, and that's okay. That's your right. If you don't want to vote, that's a choice too.
Sure.
You don't want to get involved. You made a choice, but you know, down the road, you made that choice.
Right. Cool. Anything else you're thinking, or?
No, I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Talked about economic development, infrastructure, you know, roads. We're working on it, you know. We didn't really have any roads get paid for 4 years.
I think we briefly touched on this, but we were talking before we started recording. One thing that happens, I guess, in the national media is, you know, right-wing media will try to say, oh, crime is through the roof. And then left-wing media will say, oh, well, you know, the numbers just don't bear it out, blah, 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 blah. And it's one thing to do that at the national level, but for people who just, like, live in Millville, what would you say is actually happening on the ground so that we're not having, like, these weird nebulous conversations? Is it up? Is it down? Is it being handled?
Well, first of all, we have to go to the definition of crime, right? So, you know, what I call a crime, what, I don't know, some left-wing lunatic might call a crime is two different things. So, I mean, to me, when I see people using drugs on the street, to me, that's a crime, right? When we have overdoses, somebody's committing a crime, right? But who are we arresting? We're not arresting anyone because we kind of got soft on all that stuff, right? So it doesn't get reported. And if you look at it that way, okay, you may not see the reality in the statistics, right? You can lie with statistics.
Right. My 9th grade biology teacher taught me that. It's like, statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics.
Correct. You can manipulate data, and I think that's what's going on. And I don't want to put the state, the county, anything in a bad light, the city, but you know, you see it. People see it. You know, people are afraid to walk in certain areas. I mean, when I was a kid, which you know, you weren't alive, of course, but you could walk anywhere in Millville. I mean, you walk through the 3rd Ward, you know, I got my first bloody nose there because my grandparents lived there. I was like 6 or 7 years old. That's why it was called the Bloody Third. But, you know, you knew when you walked, you didn't have to worry about getting shot or stabbed or robbed, right? So the town was safe. Doors were left open. I mean, you know, but, you know, and then by the same token, if you did do something a little wacky, your parents knew by the time you got home, right? So it was a whole different, you know, a couple generations ago, I guess, really. So, but, you know, I would love to see that return. Not that I think it ever will, but maybe someday. I guess there's always hope, right?
So, I mean, just the general takeaway is there is a change that has been happening, and regardless of what the statistics say, you know, it's not as safe as it used to be.
No, and I think that's a direct result of two things. I think it's a direct result of unemployment, meaningful employment, as well as the result of the federal government subsidizing rental properties, right? So now if I'm a landlord, and it's a business decision, so sure, right? If I can get $1,600 or let's say $1,400 for a house through the federal government, but you know, a guy working can only afford to pay me $1,100, what am I going to do?
Right. Yeah. You're
So
just sitting on worthless property.
correct. So I could get the $1,100 or I can get $1,600.
Right.
I'm here to make money if I'm a landlord, right? So, I look at that and gets into the same thing with college loans, why college is so expensive. Hey, you got a guaranteed loan. Anybody can get the loan.
Right.
I'm going to get as much money as I can, right? So, it's always dangerous when the federal government gets involved in helping.
Yeah, the way I see a lot of that is, I guess you could say it's overreach in the sense of, does somebody in Washington, D.C. really know what's going on in Millville or whatever? It's just like...
No, we're in New Jersey, and what an apartment costs in Newark is far from what an apartment should cost in Millville.
Right.
In my opinion, right? So, again, we're back to employment. Factories went away. Well, people have to go to work. People moved. People left. Houses became available, and they became available cheap. And landlords bought them up. And, at one time, I owned a bunch of rental properties. They were all in Bridgeton, and I just got disgusted with it and sold them, and that was the end of that. I had enough.
Right.
But, people need housing. Don't take that the wrong way, and it doesn't disparage anybody on Section 8. But, hey, if the government was involved, maybe, they'd only be getting help for the same amount that people that are employed could get help for, and it's got to be very frustrating to be on the, and I know people that they made just a very little bit too much, right, to get assistance. And they're like, I would be better off
if you just had
if I worked less or, and how's that help anybody? That's a problem beyond Millville.
Sure. Okay, cool. Sounds good. So again, we've got the Millville City Commissioner Board election coming up.
Yep.
4 candidates for 1 seat. Hopefully we can reach out to the candidates and get their opinion on what Joe has brought up. That way you guys can make your decision about which direction you think the city should go in. And hopefully that helps.
Just one more thought. And,
Sure.
and I have said about, paying the employees, right? But we have some commissioners that forget that the employees work for the residents and not the other way around.
Right.
So
that's a cultural...
That's a cultural thing for some commissioners, and I understand it because of their background. But they need to broaden their horizon somewhat.
Right. I can even relate that to when I was in the music industry. I was playing in bands and stuff, and one guy said, I know you're going to be a good musician because the way you think about it is when you're on stage, you're thinking about what does the audience member want, right? You're not there to be on stage and show off and get all the attention. Well, I mean, you do get some attention, obviously, because people are paying. But the idea is you're trying to make them have fun. You want them to dance and sing along and be the same kind of concept with serving in government. At the end of the day, you're trying to make the constituent happy, not just do whatever you want because you got elected.
Correct. I mean, you're not there to impose your will on I mean, there's stuff that I do, and I try to keep in the best interest of the residents, not in my own best interest.
Right.
And sometimes people have a hard time understanding that. And, we have candidates with, a little bit of diverse backgrounds there. But in the end, it's all about people.
Right.
Right. So, I'm probably not the best commissioner at dealing with people because I have a tendency to say what the truth is and what is on my mind. And it's necessary, but most people don't really want to hear the truth.
I've run into that plenty of times in my life, so.
So, as long as everybody's doing their part, you can have the guys that go out and, sell it, and you can have the guys that figure it out and do it.
Right.
Right?
Got it.
You need a combination of that.
Yep.
Guys or girls before somebody else.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right. Sorry.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's taken me a lot of time to make these kinds of connections and get the information. Hopefully that streamlines it to anybody who actually cares,
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Yep, thank you.